What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. Today's episode is another in the long line of 2026 NASCAR preview and prediction episodes. Without further ado, let's get into some storylines heading into the tricky triangle in the Pocono Mountains. Big one, Denny Hamlin stays hot and dominates Michigan. I believe it was the largest margin of victory on an oval track in the next gen era. Denny Hamlin, especially late, just pulls away and for the second straight week goes back to front to win the race. And in addition to that, if you count the All-Star race, which is not a points-paying race, but it is a race, he's won the last three Cup Series competitions, and he has a really good chance this weekend at a track he really loves in Pocono. Spire continued to show some speed. You saw Hocevar and Suarez up front quite a bit, and you saw them up front at the end. I don't think they had quite the long run speed they always needed, but Spire continuing to show more and more speed consistently. There's still some tracks I don't think they figured out, but for the large majority of tracks, at least Suarez and Hocevar seem to have found a way to run up front. Is it just me, or was Sunday a little bit about attrition? You saw so many wrecks, so many cars where if you just stayed clean or you didn't DNF or have to make extensive repairs, you found a way to like a top 25 finish because so many cars were wrecking out and DNFing. And sometimes it's just as important to be lucky and miss wrecks as it is to be good. And there's quite a few drivers that I think are happy that they were lucky on Sunday. The points got real jumbled up. They were already in certain places jumbled up, but now you're seeing more separation between certain groups of drivers. You're seeing massive swings. You're seeing people rise and fall. But with all that attrition, that's what happens. The point standings get messed up, and that was the case again on Sunday. It's go time. And by it's go time, I mean it is start to time. It's about time. Less than 10 weeks until the end of the regular season. You want to put yourself in the best position possible in the playoffs. Yeah, you can make the playoffs by finishing the top 16, but you can't win it unless you're around that top 5. So there's a lot of drivers that need to put the pedal down if they want to have a chance at winning a championship or even putting themselves in that conversation. Because right now, in my opinion, there's only 2 drivers that look like they consistently have race winning speed. And when you look at the points a little bit later in this episode, you'll see how far ahead they are of everybody else. And speaking of it's go time, you see Spire Motorsports. They seem like they know it's go time. They're consistently bringing speed. I know I already said that, but you're seeing Carson Hocevar continue to be aggressive because it's always go time for him. A lot of controversy this weekend. He did cause a big wreck that eliminated some big contenders. You've seen a lot of stuff said about Hocevar, and this is all I'm going to say. I'm not going to cover it every single week because some drivers are some drivers are just going to race the way they're going to race. Hocevar's a young guy. I do think he has plenty that he still needs to learn, and I think he will continue to refine himself as a driver because he clearly has the speed and the talent. I don't think the move on the restart was very smart, but it was aggressive, and sometimes I think he's overly aggressive and it hurts himself. I do think NASCAR is better when there's easy villains, and Hocevar is an easy villain, but he's also a driver that a lot of people like because he's so aggressive and doesn't care what anybody thinks. I think he is good for the sport, but you still have to learn how to drive, and you can't just run over everybody all the time. And sometimes I get the vibe that's what he's doing. But I have no real strong feeling about him one way or the other. I think sometimes he does really good, and I think sometimes he does bad, and it all evens out. Speaking of wrecks, Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott got in one, and they were in really good position, and Christopher Bell gets caught up in somebody else's wreck when he has a race-winning car for the umpteenth time this season, and it was the hardest recorded hit in the next-gen era, and the hardest recorded hit, I think they said in like 10 years or something like that. Christopher Bell Chase Elliott took him into the wall, not on purpose. Elliott just got washed up the track. The 2 cars come together, and Bell goes into the wall. And you know how high speed Michigan is. And man, he hit so hard. It looked like an awful hit. Information coming out during the week that the chassis actually looked like it was cracked in that right front area. That was an awful hit. Christopher Bell going to be a real warrior and race through a broken wrist this week. I don't imagine that's an easy thing to do. I wouldn't want to drive a long distance in my regular car on the highway with a broken wrist. I can't imagine how it's going to be at Pocono. Who can get hot? That's going to be important. You see guys have great summers, as things warm up, the tracks change a little bit, or the courses change a little bit, and you see drivers get hot sometimes and go on a run. Who can get hot going into the playoffs? You saw it, Chase Briscoe last year. Not a great start to the season last year. He got hot. He actually won this race at Pocono, made the championship 4. A lot of stories like that have happened throughout the years in NASCAR. Who can get hot at the right time and make a run in the playoffs, make a run to get good playoff seeding? And lastly, I've been listening to some podcasts, been listening to some media availability, and I'm loving the friendship between Chase Briscoe and Noah Gragson, but are they the biggest trolls in NASCAR? They first go on a couple weeks ago, if you don't remember, are on Door Bumper Clear with Freddie Kraft and are talking about waxing Crescent Moon and how it means the track is real gripped up and the moon changes how the track is gripped up, obviously pulling their leg, but they couldn't quite tell. And now they're going on Bussin' with the Boys, who's doing some great NASCAR promotion and doing a lot of dual driver interviews. And they're talking about keeping the sock on at night and all this other stuff. It's kind of funny because, the world of NASCAR is sometimes unknown, and Briscoe and Gragson in particular, we all know is silly, a fun-loving guy, and it looks like, and he and Briscoe's friendship, it looks like those two guys like to have fun together, but they might be some of the biggest trolls in NASCAR. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should go and check it out on YouTube or where you find your podcast. Those two guys, anytime they're together with the media, seem to give them a hard time, and I don't think the media members always pick up on it. History at Pocono in the next gen, there's been 4 races. Chase Elliott, that memorable 2022 Pocono race where Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain were in the top 5 and Joe Gibbs Racing was having a great day, and Denny Hamlin puts Ross Chastain in the wall and to get payback after everything that had happened that season. And then Ross Chastain comes down and collects some other contenders. I remember Kevin Harvick being one of them. I do think Harvick would get into victory lane twice later that season, but Harvick was on that long winless streak. Ross Chastain comes down the track after Denny Hamlin wrecks him, collects Kevin Harvick, and that was 2 of the best cars from that day. Got taken out, but that's not where the drama stopped that year. The reason why I'm bringing this up, Chase Elliott did not cross the finish line first. If you remember, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch were first and second in that race out of JGR. JGR had a lot of speed. Truex was always good here in the next gen with them. But Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch got disqualified in post-race inspection for having illegal cars. And then Chase Elliott in third place was declared the winner. So while Chase Elliott technically has a win and has very good stats here, he has technically never crossed the finish line first. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. He still has really good stats at this track. Just keep that in mind when looking at average finishes and top 5s and stuff. And when you get disqualified, you are officially billed in last. But don't worry, Denny Hamlin came back to the next season and won the race at Pocono in 2023. Ryan Blaney in 2024 won this race. And then Chase Briscoe held off Denny Hamlin last year during fuel saving to win his first race with Joe Gibbs Racing. So you're seeing a lot of Denny Hamlin already. Best average finish, Chase Elliott, 6.3. Christopher Bell, 9.8. Denny Hamlin has a 10 average finish in 4 races, which is the 3rd best in the series, despite being disqualified in 2022. Has a 1st and a 2nd outside of that as well. Tyler Reddick at 10.5 and Kyle Larson at 11.3. We might be looking at a Toyota domination yet again. Toyota already has really good stats at Pocono, and Toyota's been dominating on a lot of the ovals this year. We could see another dominant Toyota weekend, especially at a track they've historically dominated. They're dominating at tracks this season that they normally don't dominate at. This is one of the tracks that they have a lot in the next gen era. Look out for another 5 Toyotas versus the rest of the field race again. Top 5, most top 5s in the next gen. Denny Hamlin has 3. It would be 4 for 4 if not for that DNF. Three drivers are tied at 2 top 5s: Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick. Funnily enough, there's 4 drivers with multiple top 5s at Pocono in the next era. They are also the drivers that have the top 4 in points. So you might not see a lot of movement between the guys at the top of the standings this week. You might see all of them running up front, battling for stage points in the race win. 9 drivers have 1 top 10: Joey Logano, Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Chris Buescher, Chase Briscoe, Alex Bowman, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson. I did mention Martin Truex earlier just to show you how good Joe Gibbs Racing has been since Chase Briscoe has only raced 1 race in the 19. Martin Truex actually has the best average finish and has multiple top 5s and has multiple top 10s. But obviously he is retired. But that just goes to show that Joe Gibbs is even stronger here than maybe some of these numbers appear. And then in top 10s, Chase Elliott has a top 10 every single race at Pocono. Hamlin and Reddick are at 3 out of the 4, and then 6 drivers are tied at 2 top 10s. Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, and Bubba Wallace. Again, a lot of Toyota names being said there, a couple of Fords, and a couple of Chevys. Favorites to win Pocono. Joe Gibbs Racing is my favorite. Denny Hamlin is my driver favorite. I think Denny Hamlin is a favorite to win his 3rd point race in a row, 4th race overall. This weekend, Joe Gibbs Racing, I imagine, is going to be very fast for all the reasons I've already said. Hendrick Motorsports looked like they were a little bit faster last week on the strength of Kyle Larson. I think they continue to get faster as they figure out this new Chevy body. 23XI, if Joe Gibbs Racing is fast, you can count on 23XI being fast usually. 23XI has had speed at every type of track. They've been good at Pocono in the past. I expect nothing less from them. Team Penske is the other team that has won a race at Pocono, and I expect them to bring some speed this week. And I wanted to put Spire because they've been running so well, and maybe this is the year they figure it out. But so far, they have not quite figured out Pocono, but RFK has. I think those are the 2 teams in contention for the 5th best team in NASCAR. You know that those top 4 are always going to be there. But here's my thought process. Spire, I think, has race-winning speed more frequently, but they also have no speed more frequently. RFK doesn't really have race-winning speed a lot, but they also don't have we're going to finish last a lot. They are very good at always bringing solid cars that compete for top 10s. And I think that's what you might see in Pocono. I think Spire's more likely to bring a race-winning car, but I think they're more likely to bring a really slow car. And because of that, and because RFK is proven at Pocono, I'm going to put RFK at 5th. Driver rankings, I already said Denny Hamlin was my favorite, but I'm putting Chase Elliott 2, best average finish. He's also technically won a race here. Kyle Larson has had speed here quite frequently. I have Larson at 3. Christopher Bell, I think, is going to get some bad luck off. Christopher Bell deserves to have won a race this year, and just a lot of bad luck has led to him not. A lot of wrecks outside of his control. Bell's been fast here. I think he'll be fast here again. Ryan Blaney has just found a way to get good finishes. Hasn't really had a chance to get that really good point day with both stages and a race win. I think this is going to be the best chance he's had in a couple of weeks to do so. Tyler Reddick is fast on everything. For the first time all season, did not get the top 15 last week, and that's because he wrecked from the front of the field when he was clearly a top 3 car. Tyler Reddick should have plenty of speed at Pocono. They have speed everywhere else. Ty Gibbs has good numbers here. He's been fast this year. He's been more consistent this year. Another one of those Joe Gibbs cars that should be racing towards the front. William Byron at 8. Normally I'd have him higher. They've just struggled a little bit this year. I don't think they've struggled so much where he should struggle this weekend. But I think until I see more consistent speed, I might be dropping Byron down a little bit. I expect Hendrick Motorsports to be more competitive than they have been most of the season this weekend. Chase Briscoe at 9, and he's the defending race winner here. I've been saying Toyota and JGR should be good. The guy who used to drive that car has been good here. But Chase Briscoe, out of all the JGR cars, is the one. Christopher Bell gets wrecked out a lot, but he gets wrecked out a lot from the front. Briscoe in the 19 team seems to me to be the least consistent at getting finishes this season after having such a great season, particularly at the end last year. But I still think Briscoe should have a good point stay and be in the top 10, potentially the top 5 all race. And I didn't know who to put at number 10. I wanted to put Carson Hocevar. He's been running well recently, trying to make a move into the top 10 in points. Eric Jones is somebody that has had a lot of good finishes in a row and has been good at Pocono. But I'm going to give it to Brad Kay. They need a rebound after a really rough week at Michigan last week. Their point situation is quickly degrading, and I think they show up ready to go this week. Give me Brad Kay as my number 10 in the driver rankings. Here's your regular season standings, and this is the closest anybody's been to Tyler Reddick really all season. After Tyler Reddick had that incredibly hot start, his first DNF, and all of a sudden Denny Hamlin is only 51 points back of Reddick and has over 100-point gap to third. It feels like it's Reddick and Hamlin against everybody else this season on points. But then you have third and fourth. Ryan Blaney is rolling around getting good finishes. He's 106 points back of Denny. Chase Elliott has won 2 races and has had a couple of not great weeks, but he's still showing pretty consistent speed and the ability to get good finishes. He's only 30 back of Blaney, and I think those are far and away your top 4, with Reddick and Hamlin being your top 2. And then Ty Gibbs at 470, only 12 points back of Chase Elliott. He is 199 points back of Tyler Reddick and 148 points back of his teammate Denny Hamlin in 5th. Kyle Larson is still in 6th, 17 back of Gibbs. He and Gibbs have kind of been staying the same distance apart a lot recently. Then I think I have another drop in tier down to this next 7 through 10 area. Carson Hocevar moving up in the standings this week with a great week. He's at 428, which is 25 points back of Larson. Chris Buescher is 4 points back of Hocevar in 8th. Daniel Suarez at 418 is 10 back of his teammate in 7th and 6 back of Chris Buescher. And then Christopher Bell, after that DNF, has fallen all the way down to 10th, where he is 18 back of Hocevar and 8 back of Suarez. So 7 through 10 only separated by 18 points. They have stayed pretty close together this last month or so, and that is Hocevar, Buescher, Suarez, and Bell. And then we get right outside the top 10. They were a little bit closer before this weekend. This 11 through 13 group, I think, is in a very similar boat and all have the ability, if they get hot, to run up into that top 8. And that's Bubba Wallace, William Byron, and Chase Briscoe in 11, 12, and 13. Wallace, after falling down to 15 to begin the race last week, is up to 11th. Had a great week, lots of points. He's at 378. The first driver in the standings, not at 400 points. William Byron dropped the position, but he's only back above Bubba by 1 point at 377. And then Chase Briscoe was at 370, only 8 points back. So Bubba Wallace, William Byron, and Chase Briscoe are separated by 8 points, right outside the top 10 in 11, 12, and 13. And that could shift on a stage-by-stage basis, but definitely on a race-by-race basis. The question for them is, can they get up into this group in front of them that is also super close together? Chase Briscoe, by the way, put together well, I'll talk about that later. And then we get to what I call the bubble group. We do have a road course and 2 more totals, so maybe Shane Van Gisbergen gets into this group ahead of him because of the road courses. But Shane Van Gisbergen is now in 14th, 15 behind that group, 15 behind Briscoe, who's part of that group. And then 5 points up on Brad Keselowski, who's fallen all the way to 15th. And then there's an 18-point cutoff to Austin Cindric, who's at 332, right on the cut line after an awful race. And Joe Logano, who's putting together some decent races and starting to call his way back up the standings, is only 3 points back of his teammate Austin Cindric at the playoff cut line. And then we have maybe the hottest non-playoff, or the hottest driver that's not sitting in the playoffs right now. Eric Jones is at 314 and has come from well outside the top 20 to where he is now just 18 points back of the cut line with tons of momentum. Ryan Preece has fallen all the way from battling for 11th and 12th all the way to 19th after a couple of bad weeks in DNFs and getting caught up in other people's wrecks. He's at 313, 1 point back of Eric Jones. And I believe it's actually a tie for 20th. And right now I'm showing Michael McDowell at 286. So once you get back past Ryan Preece at 19th and you get to this 20th, it's kind of a ways back where they probably can't make up all of the ground unless something crazy happens. So I really think you're looking at 19 drivers that have the potential to make the playoffs already. But maybe McDowell or Allmendinger are the two guys that are right there. They are very good on road courses. Maybe if they can do well enough on the ovals, they'll make the ground up. But right now, it certainly seems like Denny Hamlin maybe can run down Reddick, especially if Reddick has another bad day. But it seems like it's Reddick and Hamlin, and then they're running away from everybody else. And last thing for this week, the power rankings. And after this week, for the first time all season, Tyler Reddick is dethroned at the top of the power rankings. Denny Hamlin, after winning multiple races in a row, going to a racetrack he likes, Tyler Reddick wrecking out. Denny Hamlin is the new number one. Tyler Reddick is number two. And then just as I have it in the point standings, they both had solid weeks. Blaney and Elliott are 3 and 4. And like I said, I feel like they're kind of separated from the two behind them. Larson had a better week than Gibbs, partially because Gibbs wrecked out even though he had speed. But Larson also seems like the last couple weeks they're finding some consistency to be able to run up front. Larson and 5, Gibbs at 6. Hocevar up to 7 after a great week. Buescher riding around to a solid top 10, stays where he is at 8. Bell, I'm not dropping below Suarez. Bell might have had the best car. It might have been better than Denny's. I would have loved to see that late race. But he gets wrecked out. I have no worries that Bell can make a run towards the top 5. He's not too far out on points, and they have speed every week. Bell wrecking out did make me drop him, I think, from 5th to 9th. But I still trust him more than Suarez. And, for now, I'm leaving Bell in front of Suarez. Bubba Wallace back up to 11 after a solid week. Briscoe at 12. Byron at 13. I've talked about how those three are kind of in a similar group, similar situation, and I have them ranked based on where I think they stand right now. Bubba, Briscoe, Byron. 14, Joe Logano, after a solid week, moves up to 14. By the end of this week, he could be back into the playoffs. I'm sure everybody loves to hear that. I have Eric Jones at 15. He's quietly putting together a great week after a great week. He had a lot of speed the last 2 weeks. Flash potentially having some race-winning speed, especially this week. Eric Jones up to 15, and he's pretty good at Pocono, so maybe he keeps rising. Shane Van Gisbergen down to 16, a really bad week at Nashville for Trackhouse. Not a great week this week at Michigan. Van Gisbergen on the strength of the playoffs and where he stands in the standings this late to the season, I'm giving him 16. Brad Keselowski with a really bad week moves down to 17. Cindric with another really bad week he has much less of a cushion on the cut line, is in 18th. Priest is like free falling, but still not outside of the top 20. Like I said, this top 19 is kind of, I think, clearly the best 19 teams right now, if that makes sense. Not that that's like crazy, that's half the field, but I think you know who your top half and your bottom half are, at least to this point in the season. And Ryan Priest is bringing up the rear in that particular top, and what are my eyes, the top half of the field. And then you have Michael McDowell sitting 20th. That's all I have for you guys this week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tons of sports this weekend. The College World Series is getting kicked off. That's always a fantastic event. Make sure you tune in. Baseball's going on. We might have a Stanley Cup champion, and we might have an NBA Finals champion decided this weekend. So make sure you tune into that. If you're a soccer person or you just want to watch the most popular sporting event in the world Cup has officially started as well. I know I have mostly Americans, so they might not care too much about that. Plenty of great action this weekend, regardless. So make sure you find a couch and watch some sports this weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of your families. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.